Tonight, I'd like to start by talking about the last few weeks and how we've lost two great souls that become good ancestors, but they were before. They were always good ancestors. Archbishop Desmond Tutu and Thich Nhat Hanh, Thai, the teacher, lived lives dedicated to peace and reconciliation. We remember them also for their incredible moral strength. My earliest memory of Thai was his work during the years of the Vietnam War. His calling to engaged Buddhism, while caring for orphans and tending to placing the dead in body bags, led him to call for peace and the opposition to the war, all war. This was so unpopular that he had to leave his country. His continued work for peace and love for the earth have inspired spiritual practices of peaceful interbeing worldwide. Bishop Tutu taught us the action of communal relationships, Ubuntu. I exist because you exist. This action could lead a good climate justice governance. This project, an African contribution to a human global commons. The bishop's ability to consistently speak of truth and reconciliation before and after apartheid was extremely hard. He was able to say to one side, "You will always be shown to have done these horrible things," and then to the other side, "and now we must live in peace with this knowledge." The change they made in our world was not widely accepted. Learning to be peace and speaking from love and the reconciliation with creation is what we are called to do. This is from the 10 Love Letters to the Earth by Thich Nhat Hanh, recently published in Emergence magazine. Dear Mother Earth, you were born from the dust of distant supernovas, from the deaths of ancient stars. Your manifestation is but a continuation, and when you cease to exist in this current form, you too will continue in another. May it be so. And so, Kathy, I think it would be good to start introducing who we are, and maybe you can give a short description of your job, which is just wonderful.
Yeah, I'm living the dream. Bye, Ed.
Hi.
Again, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Kathy Robotsky with Pennsylvania Interfaith Power and Light. I started in March 2021 with PA IPL as the development associate, which is way outside of my typical area of expertise. Linda Wigington was one of my thesis advisors. Our guest tonight, Linda, was one of my thesis advisors. So I come from an architectural background. I wouldn't call myself a building scientist, as Linda would call herself a building scientist, but I have dabbled in building science. I've come from a sustainability management background. But my community work, my volunteer work and community work in the South Hills led me more into this development type of position, where I thoroughly enjoy working with people of diverse faiths at PA IPL to approach climate change from a moral and ethical perspective. It's such a refreshing change, I must say, to start a meeting with a reflection and to end a meeting with a prayer, and to have glorious people like you on board who are working so hard to make a difference in our world. So I'm truly enjoying being with you and working with all of you. I neglected to introduce Wanda Guthrie, who is our convener for the Southwest PA IPL chapter. Wanda's been holding up the reins of the Pittsburgh chapter for many years and has done fabulous work. We are trying to expand our reach by rebranding ourselves or relaunching ourselves as the Southwest PA chapter. And I know Wanda can speak for herself. And then I'll be happy to introduce some of our other board members who are here and say a few words about our board members who are not here with us tonight. Go ahead, Wanda.
Thank you very much, Kathy. I'm excited that you're with us and doing the work that you do. For the longest time, I was kind of by myself. And now this is amazing. We have you. We have Patty DeMarco on our board. We have Dee Kachurka on our board and Kelly Yagatich. And they all have amazing backgrounds. And so if you would like to introduce them, that'd be great. But I have just such great expectations now for all of us here in Western Pennsylvania.
Since Dee is here, Dee, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about the project you want to work on with everybody.
You're muted. Muted.
Hi, I'm Dee Kachurka. I'm a registered nurse. I joined PA IPL's board last year. So I've been on for, this is my second year with the board. And I think, Wanda, I think you were the one that brought me on board with the board. But, you know, I've known Wanda for many, many years. And of course, Patty. And we've worked together on many environmental projects. But what inspired me with PA IPL was the moral and ethical obligation towards environmental justice. I love the diversity of the board and the people that are on the board. Greg Williams was a very avid tree planter, and that really, I'm a vice president with Isaac Walton League, another environmental group, and we are very active in tree planting. So that also inspired me to be a member of PA IPL. Currently, I am the Blueberry Ambassador for the Southwestern PA chapter. And that means that, you know, not everybody can plant a tree, especially in urban areas that don't have much of a tree canopy. We still wanted to be able to engage frontline communities in environmental work. And so we plant blueberry bushes. They are large blueberry bushes, which will grow 5 to 6 feet. So I call them mini trees. Anyone can plant one in their backyard, and it helps not only the environment, but it's a food source, a very healthy food source for frontline communities. And it also just brings the community together because we distribute the blueberry bushes through local community farms. So, you know, people can walk a few blocks from their home and go visit their local community farm and get fresh produce, and also take home a blueberry bush with them and plant that in their backyard. And then they have a steady supply of fresh vegetables, fresh fruit. So this year is when we're launching the program. And we have hundreds of blueberry bushes that we still have available for distribution. If anyone has any organizations, I was just contacted today by SHIM program, and they're interested in obtaining some blueberry bushes, and they would also like to distribute them in the local communities. So, you know, anyone who is interested in obtaining blueberry bushes or using them for Earth Day distribution, they're going to be arriving April 18th, which happens to be Earth Week, because Earth Day this year is April 22nd. So we will have them available for Earth Day. So anyone who's interested in distributing some blueberry bushes, we have them, and they are free through PA IPL. So you can contact me. We're on Facebook. It's called the Pittsburgh Blueberry Project, or you can just reach me through PA IPL.
That's wonderful. I think everybody's getting really excited about this, you know, and you've contacted so many really good farms. The Ballfield Farm, Garfield Farm, Community Farm, you know, so, you know, they're coming in. Thank you. So before we go any further, I'd like to give people a chance to introduce themselves. And I'm going to start with Mary Beth.
Hi,
Can I butt in? Hi, Mary Beth. Can I butt in
Sure.
for one
Hi,
second?
Kathy.
As you're doing that, as you're telling us our stories, or your stories, can you please indicate a few projects that you might like PA IPL to work on with you?
Okay. I am Mary Beth. I'm a retired clinical psychologist professor from Chatham University, where I taught for many years about environmental issues and well-being. And since retirement, I've continued to do presentations about mental health and well-being and climate change and nature. My other hat that I wear is I'm on the board of Giving to Grow, which is a giving circle that raises funds to contribute to frontline communities addressing food insufficiency among kids. So there might be a connection, Dee, with some of your work. I'm not exactly sure how we would draw that line, but maybe we can talk about that.
Thank you. That's very exciting, Mary Beth.
Yeah.
Okay. And Ann Harnick, I've known you for many years.
I'm Ann Harnack. I'm retired. I do live in the South Hills. I'm a lifelong learner, and I'm just here to see what it's all about.
Great, great. Yes. And I see Bob Mitchell.
I'm sorry, I'm late. I was in a citizens climate lobby conversation with some other people, and I don't know, it's hard to break away. But so I'm glad to be in this group. So I live in Murraysville, which is on the other side of Monroeville. I guess Wanda and Joe know really well where that is. So I'm in a kind of a different political environment, maybe than many of you. As far as really connecting with IPL, one thing I guess, well, so I'm also a member of the First Unitarian Church of Pittsburgh, and we got a new minister in August, who's really a very dynamic, really exciting, person, and we're kind of energized. And she has a particular affinity to, climate environment issues, and she has, she wants to see if the church is up for what she calls an environmental justice initiative over a couple of years. And what we're aiming for is in May of every year, we have an annual meeting. And that's an opportunity for, to kind of vote on things. And so the goal is to have a proposal in May to vote on. And in the meantime, we're going through a series of conversations to, get a sense of where the congregation is. I think there's good indication that there's pretty much interest in that, but, going deeper than that, what does that really mean? And we've kind of laid out 4 major areas to work in. And so we're in the, all of that will help answer the question that you posed about, what projects. I think that's, there's a lot of projects out there, and we need to see, where the energy and where the interest and talent and whatever is needed. And then, hopefully, within a couple months, we'll have a much better sense of that. And I just wanted to say that we, in December, basically, we had we call a alternative gift market, and there were 4 causes, and one of them was IPL. And I don't know how much was collected actually, but it was specifically for the Blueberry Project. So I need to, if anybody knows if you got a check or how much it was, I'd like to know. I sort of checked on our end, but I wasn't really, I'm not sure that I had the final answer for that. But so we've sort of bought into that already, at least financially. And so if I think people would be interested in the delivery thing. I don't know how.
Thanks, Bob. We can't thank you enough, Bob, for the contributions from you and all of your congregational members at First Unitarian. I believe the check went to David Hain Menendez, our executive director at the Lewisburg address. And
Okay.
I know he's
Okay.
checking on those almost every day. So I will
Okay.
make a point of
Okay.
asking him to be
Yeah.
sure that he received it, to put your mind at ease there. But we can't thank you enough for supporting the Pittsburgh Blueberry Project in that way.
Okay, I'll let others talk now. Thank
Oh,
you.
that's okay.
Glad to be on.
I think it's interesting that the Unitarian Church, First Unitarian, has always been really interested in environment. And you put in the geothermal, to save energy. And, this is it's a wonderfully active church. And yeah, and thank you. Nancy, we're kind of talking about just introducing ourselves and maybe talking a little bit about what our churches are interested in. I'll give you a little reprieve for a minute and go to Joe Guthrie.
I don't have much to add. Most of my time is supporting Wanda in all her many endeavors, and so yeah.
That sounds like a full-time job.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Nancy Hastings is with East Liberty Presbyterian Church, and they're really good, do good work on environment. So Nancy?
Sure. Yeah, we're probably like all of you are a little slowed down because of COVID and not being able to get together and really, advocate for as much as you want. But we've been working on planning our goals for this year with a emphasis on energy use reduction. Some of them is, working with the church, and others are, working with our members and with actions. And then also reducing our carbon footprint, single-use plastics, and also exploring how we might provide information to our members about divesting of some things. And because the Presbyterian Church has come out with specific stocks that they're going to be divesting from. So we're hoping to be able to provide that. And then also just learning a little more what environmental justice is and how that plays with all the other things. So on February 13th, we're going to have some guest speakers from the Green New Deal that will be speaking. So Patty DeMarco, Claire Cohen, and I forgot the other person. So it'll be, a Zoom, a hybrid of Zoom, and some folks that will be at the church, and then with a Q&A session after that. And then we're starting to work on how we'll celebrate Earth Day. And I heard someone talking about projects, and that's where we're probably struggling a little bit in terms of what kind of projects we want to do. So most of our work now is kind of more in education.
Mhm. Well, you're going to hear more about the Blueberry Project coming up. And of course, we've got Linda here to tell us about her work. And
Right.
so I think we're kind of full with good things that we can share with each other. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Could I provide a couple of PA IPL updates before we introduce Linda?
Okay.
And thanks, Wanda. And also our two other local board members who could not be with us tonight are Dr. Patty DeMarco and Kelly Yegatich. So Patty, I'm sure you all know, is an author and educator. And the reason she can't be here tonight is she is teaching a class at Chatham and then rushing off to a borough council meeting. So she, like Wanda and Dee, have so many irons in the fire. Sometimes she's double committed, but she is past executive director of the Rachel Carson Homestead Association and director of the Rachel Carson Institute at Chatham. And she's had a 30-year career in energy and environmental policy in the private and public sectors. She's very much inspired by Rachel Carson's environmental ethic and has written on a number of topics, including her popular book, Pathways to Our Sustainable Future, A Global Perspective from Pittsburgh, which explores positive pathways towards sustainability. And I think that's one aspect that I've always learned from Patty. You always have to be positive. You can't ask people to replace something in their life, or a government entity or elected official to replace something, unless you have a positive replacement for it. So I always take that with me and try to follow her and her example in that way. And Kelly Yegatich is an environmental activist and a practicing Catholic in the local region, and she is building her career in climate action. She's the Pennsylvania regional organizer with the Climate Reality Project, so we can connect you with Kelly if you want to explore Climate Reality Core or Leadership Core in greater detail. They have courses coming up in the spring. She focuses particularly on petrochemical development and sustainable job growth in the Ohio River Valley region through her work with Reimagine Appalachia and Reimagine Jobs. And she has quite a bit of experience working with the Clean Air Council prior to joining the Climate Reality Project. She's only a recent graduate, 2018 graduate of the University of Pittsburgh with degrees in economics, urban studies, and English literature. So she's very well-rounded, and we're really privileged to have her on the team. And in terms of updates, PA IPL received a wonderful grant, which I applied for back in June and was thrilled to receive. I can't talk about it yet because we're waiting for the press release, but suffice it to say, we're going to be very busy in 2022. When we got this grant, I almost went, oh now what are we going to do? So we're going to be designing and implementing watershed protection education in environmental justice communities throughout the state, with a start in the first year in the Southwest PA region and outside of Southwest PA, well, still Southwest, but outside of Pittsburgh, going as far as Ohio, Pyle, Somerset, those areas. Central PA around State College and Lancaster, and Philadelphia in the greater city region. And this grant is based on designing these programs to reach people in both urban and rural areas. So we will be looking at watershed protection in a number of different ways, including agriculture, and then of course, urban communities, which most of us are familiar with. We've also applied and hope to receive 2 additional environmental education grants, which will help us to supplement that grant with more general environmental education, and those are focusing on the Ballfield Farms community and the Garfield Community Farm community for starters. And then once we work through these programs, we'll be reaching out to additional environmental justice communities, both in person, hopefully, and virtually. And through John Creasy at the Open Door Church and of Garfield Community Farm, we're working in collaboration with Open Hand Ministries, Solar United Neighbors, Beulah Presbyterian, 350 Pittsburgh. Let me see who else is in that group. Quite a few representatives from the Pittsburgh Theological Seminary, University of Pittsburgh, et cetera, to expand the amazing work that Open Hand Ministries has done in our region. They've increased home equity of over $1 million in frontline communities by providing easy access funding to homes for purchase in those communities. And that is renovating the homes as well in a manner similar to Habitat for Humanity, but focusing particularly on the high quality of the renovation and the energy efficiency of the renovation. So what we're hoping to work on with Solar United Neighbors then is to have somewhat of a co-op where, if you're familiar with Solar United Neighbors, you know that they develop solar co-ops throughout the whole entire country. And what these allow is for people to purchase solar panels for their home or facility at a lower rate because they have the buying power of the co-op. So we're now surveying, Wayne Younger from Open Hand Ministries is surveying the 16 homeowners that they currently have renovated to see if they're interested, because a large part of what we do at PA IPL is to make sure that we are approaching any community with the needs that they really want to have met. And that's why we're asking you also tonight, what projects, what can you bring to the fore? How can we better serve you? We don't want to come into any community and force a project or an educational program on that community. So we're surveying these homeowners that are already renovated to see if they're eligible and see if they're interested in installing solar panels on their home. And if they are, Sun is going to provide grant funding to do that. And then we're hoping to build this up to 100 homes, expanding in the future so that we can create a community, a real community model, which then we can use to change the hearts and minds of some of our local, state, and national officials. We also received a grant from National IPL. They're just brimming with information here. We received a grant from National IPL that David facilitated to implement a brand new advocacy program. So it'll be something of a get out the vote campaign, get people to the polls, particularly in frontline communities, and work on other aspects of voting advocacy, like voting rights laws, et cetera. We have a wonderful policy engagement manager, Amani Reed. And so if you want to work on any of those projects with Amani, you can reach out to her at policy@paipl.org, or if you want to contact David about the advocacy project, you can reach out to him at director@paipl.org. And I'm always available at outreach@paipl.org. Thanks very much. I'll be quiet now.
That's really wonderful news, all of it. Boy, I hope to find out more about all of those projects. Thank you. Well, I see we have a new person here with us, Catherine. Welcome. Without any further ado, I think we would all like to hear from Linda. Linda Wigington provides indoor air quality and residential energy consulting services through her firm, Linda Wigington and Associates. She brings 45 years of building performance experience to her role as a leader in Pittsburgh, the Pittsburgh-based initiative, ROCIS. And that is
ROCIS.
Yeah. So anyway, this is she will be talking about the monitoring and she's already monitoring 400 homes in Southwest Pennsylvania with this low-income monitoring project. And so Linda, you could probably fill us in more, but we're really excited about you being here and want to hear from you. Thank you.
Well, that was good timing. My power went out and I was just trying to find Kathy's phone number to give her a call. And it reminded me that I always feel you should have a backup plan, but I had not sent anybody the PowerPoint ahead of time. So I would have had to be a strictly audio presentation. So I'm glad it's not, but let me do a few things here. I'm going to stop the video and then share my screen and then bring up the slide deck and switch to slideshow. So I don't know if you had realized that I had dropped off.
No.
I heard a
Well, good.
ding. I heard a ding, but I didn't realize that was you. So I'm glad you came right back.
It was like, geez, I mean, because I've got power on my computer, but my Wi-Fi went out. So anyway, I don't know what you said in introducing me, but I am from ROCIS, and I get to present insights to the low-cost monitoring project, including how you can participate, what we've learned and why we do what we do. So I sure hope that interruption in power will not be here. So ROCIS stands for Reducing Outdoor Contaminants in Indoor Spaces. Some people think, oh, that's ROCIS. No, we're not ROCIS. We're ROC. We rock or we're ROCIS, one of the two. It's an initiative that's been funded by the Heinz Endowment for 6 years, going on 7. And the focus is to reduce the impact of exterior pollution on indoor spaces. And you might say, well, that seems sort of funny. Why are you focused on indoor spaces and outdoor pollution? Most people don't realize, but most of the exposure to outdoor pollution happens in our homes, and particularly, well, in buildings, and particularly in our homes. You know, even though you might get a higher dose on a per minute basis if you're outside versus inside, depending on what's going on. The thing is, we spend 95% of our time in buildings and probably more than 80% of our time in homes, and therefore the cumulative exposure is much, much greater. In addition, there's indoor sources that add to the mix and the complexity. So our primary focus is on particles, also referred to as particulate matter. The main reason within this initiative we're focused on particles is because low-cost monitors exist that make it easy to reliably monitor something useful and actually and to then access the data and use the data and learn from the data. We refer consistently to what lots of people say particulate matter, or PM 2.5. We refer to what we're looking at as particles because we're trying to create a little bit of separation between the regulatory aspect of PM 2.5 and what we're doing, because our meters are obviously not regulatory based. Quality, they are huge lower costs, and we're doing different things with them. But we're basically looking at the same stuff. We're just looking at it in a different way. So particles are this incredibly broad, diverse, huge array of stuff that's in the air. Our exposure is primarily due to inhalation. It's both solid and liquid droplets. Some things are a combination of both. And once they're inhaled, they can affect, this is official US EPA, hearts and lungs, but it's a whole host of health impacts, including low birth weight, premature birth, mental effects, Alzheimer's, you just name it, autoimmune diseases, cancer, the list of things that are emerging as being affected by particles is growing. It's the most well-researched air pollutant that exists because there is a monitoring system basically worldwide, and we have an awful lot of data about ambient. Ironically, while there's lots of information about ambient levels of particles, there's not nearly as much data about indoors. And all the data that says that we've got a huge health effect due to particles is based on what we're measuring outdoors, not based on what we're measuring indoors. So it's important to understand that particles differ in toxicity. And one thing that makes it particularly concerning is their synergy with other co-pollutants, because particularly the ultrafine particles are so small they can basically carry other toxic contaminants such as semi-volatile organic compounds and metals directly into the bloodstream, into the brain. So we don't really know the impact of the synergies because that's not something that's been very well researched. It's much more difficult to research. The premise that we have is the precautionary principle. It's a standard public health concept of avoiding or minimizing exposure and not assuming that what's regulatory, what's a standard, is necessarily adequate. And we don't necessarily need evidence. What we know is that there's a linear relationship with the more the worse in terms of health impacts, and we basically want to drive particles down. So Pittsburgh's actually, this is the good news, bad news, is that Pittsburgh's air quality is really poor, and that's good for our initiative because it gives us an opportunity to demonstrate impact. So we like to see that as a really positive spin. It sort of relates to what Kathy was saying earlier about you gotta have a positive. But because it's poor within every cohort, a cohort's 3 to 4 weeks, we often get a glimpse of some good air quality. There's a few days of good air quality, typically within a month. The majority is usually ho-hum, pretty fair. But anyway, it allows us to see the impact of what we're doing and the interaction between outdoor and indoor. So this information is from the American Lung Association. They've done the State of the Air report for years. Their State of the Air report is based on data that's turned into EPA. And we Pittsburgh ranks unfortunately at the top. So we're the 9th most at risk of metropolitan areas for year-round particle pollution. We're the worst east of the Rockies for both long-term and short-term particle pollution. And we're 16th most at risk in the US for short-term or 24-hour PM. So not good. So particles are a whole variety of sizes, but what we're focusing on are basically invisible. So this just gives you a sense of scale. This is a human hair. So human hair is 50 to 70 microns. And I don't know about you, but I don't think in terms of microns. I think in terms of inches. But anyway, 50 to 70 microns is a human hair. These blue circles each represent something that would be 10 microns in diameter. And then the red circles within that are 2.5 microns. So if you hear references to air pollution, air quality, and it's PM 2.5, it means the particles that are smaller, equal to or smaller than these tiny red, pink ones. So that's typically combustion particles, metals, organic compounds, really, really small stuff. Now, our workhorse, our main monitor is the Dylos 1700. What it does is it measures particles, that are 0.5 micron and larger. So even though it's measuring things in a different way, it's measuring the same stuff, the same sort of group of stuff in terms of size as you would capture in PM 2.5. Though we're not capturing things that are smaller than 0.5 micron. But the 0.5 micron to 2 microns represents an awful lot of what we see in the ambient air. So there've been a number of studies, a number of modeling studies just looking at human health population kinds of stuff, mega studies, whatever you call those. But anyway, the best estimates of mortality are that there's 230 to 300,000 deaths a year due to exposure to particles. And 60% of those particles are outdoor particles that are indoor spaces. And we're right here estimating 7 to 9% or 7 to close to 10% of all deaths being attributed to particulate matter. Though, these don't come like COVID with a sort of a label on them. These are often disguised by a whole lot of other diseases. And we're not just talking about mortality. When we think of the impact of particles, we're looking at incredible lowering of our quality of life and our ability to live fully. So the health burden is huge. So on to the low-cost monitoring project. Our objectives, and this is a project of ROCIS, are to just find out, do low-cost monitors empower occupants? Do they provide accurate information or inaccurate information? Do they cause people to just give up and move, or be overly confident that there's not a problem? So that, how do low-cost monitors empower people and empower people with solid information that's actionable? The second thing is to examine the impact of outdoor on indoor air and just really look at that by having monitors co-located. And then it's not worth doing any of the monitoring unless you're actually figuring out, okay, well, what can you do about it? How can you improve it? And this is on each person's household or in some cases workplace. And then certainly to develop, in many cases, it's to support champions, people are already champions, but we're developing their knowledge and understanding so they have a better idea how to impact their households, their businesses, their neighborhoods, their organizations, and the region. So those are the objectives. So we have cohorts. A cohort is usually 3 to 4 weeks. Right now, we've been doing 4-week cohorts. And they basically borrow a bunch of equipment. So as when Kathy participated, they still get an Aldi's bag with with 3 particle monitors, a carbon dioxide, a carbon monoxide, 2 radon monitors, and also we measure temperature and relative humidity and the CO2 monitor. So that's what you get. And then during the course of the cohort, you learn from the ROCIS team. We have a team of folks who provide feedback, support, and are on our weekly or bi-weekly meetings. People benefit from hearing other people's experiences and questions. And then every week, folks get individualized, customized feedback in response to what they submit. They upload to us. And we also have within the cohort, we're doing this virtually now, and we actually like the impact of the virtual cohorts. We actually do 9 meetings over a 4-week period. We don't require attendance at everything, but we encourage people to participate as fully as possible. And each of the meetings is offered twice, because some people like mornings, some people like evenings. So we offer each meeting twice. They're also recorded, so you can follow up if you have to miss something. The last cohort, we had great attendance, and most of the people were able to participate in nearly all the meetings. And that's the opportunity to just check in with folks and provide a really structured foundation to build their knowledge of what they're seeing, how to interpret it, and then how to act on that. So as I said, we don't have a regulatory focus. We're measuring particles based on the count, not the mass. PM 2.5 is mass-based. It's based on the weight, the dried weight of the stuff that's in the air. Counting is fundamentally different, and yet we're looking at the same size stuff. But we're also looking at a very different resolution, because we're looking at 1-minute resolution, whereas EPA and Allegheny County Health Department, the whole idea of the criteria pollution regulation is based over a much longer averaging time. So people within our cohort see lots of variation, and they're surprised how much things go up and down. So the 1-minute resolution gives you great insight. Hey, what's going on? What could just cause a spike? But it also can be misleading. And yet the longer term, 8-hour averaging, 24-hour averaging, 1-year averaging really distorts in a way the peaks that could have a huge impact. And we don't really know the health impact of the nasty incidences that cause high exposure. So we focus on indoor-outdoor comparison, and we're really dealing with proof of concept. We're engaging folks and looking at their homes. So we're not dealing with something that you could have a control group. I mean, we want people to see what they're doing and the impact they're having. So we're contaminating, in a sense, the participants in terms of their experience. It's very obviously a right brain, left brain thing where people are engaged in thinking and interpreting and experiencing what they're finding out about their house and neighborhood and community. One thing we really try to stress is that just because you might have good readings doesn't mean you've got good indoor air quality. We aren't measuring everything that's there. There's a lot of stuff you can't afford to measure on a house by house basis. Volatile organic compounds is a key example. The stuff that typically has a smell to it. There's also other hormone disruptors. There's all kinds of stuff in the air that ozone that we are not measuring. There's lots of synergies between those. So we we try to say it's not that your air quality is good, or not as good. It's that your particle count is higher or lower. So we want people to understand the limitations, and we want people to know that what you cannot see might still be very important, and it's part of understanding what we're doing. So I'm going to show you a graph that explains some of our data here. Each of these vertical bars represents a site, and this was a while ago. So we had 250 sites. We're over 400 now, but these were just the residential sites. And this distribution shows the white part is 50% of the observations of their particle counts. So the particle counts are based on what the Dilos measures, which is particles per 100th of a cubic foot. We don't try to equate that to anything else. The raw data gives us what it gives us. And anytime you add all kinds of algorithms and conversions, you're possibly introducing error. So we just speak dialos, so to speak. On the right, you'll see the scale from excellent down here to very good. You see a lot of variation. These whiskers above and below the white are the the 90th percentile, or the up to the 99th percentile, 25 above, 25 below. But you sort of see a black line here that's the median. It's not very bold right now. But bottom line here, what my animation keeps trying to get me to move, must know I'm talking too much, is that a whole lot of our sites are in the fair range. There's more than a 21 difference between the site with the highest median and the lowest median, with about 25% in the good, very good, excellent, and 70% in the fair. And one thing that's important to know is this very good, poor, fair, good, very good, excellent is a scale that's a Dialos Corporation scale. It does seem to equate to purple air and other things that talk about air quality, from a green to a red. So it seems to make sense, but it's not like this is a health-based third-party scale. So 20-to-1 difference. And it was only recently that we realized the significance of the fact that the people that participate in the low-cost monitoring project typically do not smoke. They are primarily folks that already, I mean, as far as comparing it to a typical average folks, they tend to be more highly educated. We probably have far more people that are faculty members, PhDs, heads of organizations. They tend to be computer savvy. They tend to already be pretty motivated and aware of and have acted on doing things in their homes. I mean, so I'm just making very gross generalization, but I'm just saying as a tendency. But we probably have had some people that smoked, but they dropped out very quickly. Because what we found when we did some stuff and providing air cleaners through a project that was funded through Hines and Clairton, we had some households that had more than one smoker, several smokers, and those levels, the medians were up in the 20 to 30,000 level. So and we have a survey, we ask people a lot of questions, and nobody who's done that pre-survey says that they smoke in the house. So I'm just saying it's important to understand that this data is skewed based on our participants. But if we look at this, think about, okay, 2/3 approximately fair. And then we look at the outdoor. In this case, half of the outdoor readings are in the poor range in Pittsburgh. So it just moves up by about a factor of 10. No, not quite 10. Certainly a doubling in the air quality, significantly worse outdoors than indoors, based on what we're measuring. This doesn't take into consideration all indoor pollutants. So here are some ahas from past participants. And basically at the end of every cohort, we go around and we ask people for their feedback on what surprised them. And these are some of the things that they've said. Wow, really bad air quality all over the region. You know, they thought it was just over in Clairton or over by a particular pollution source, but they realized that we're all in the same air shed and it's bad all over. It might be worse in some places and more toxic, but the particle counts are almost consistently bad. A big surprise is that outdoor air is usually worse at night and in the early AM. So that surprises the folks that love to ventilate their homes and cool down their homes at night. A common response is, gee, the things I do indoors can have a big adverse effect on my particle counts. The way we cook makes a huge difference. I had no idea that how I cook made such an adverse impact on particles. I need to close windows more. We're probably responsible for increased air conditioning loads among our participants. That's a confession. was going to speak to a bunch of folks very interested in climate change. There are many ways I can improve on a positive side. We often have people say, hey, there's lots of ways I can improve my family's air quality. I'm really pleased that a lot of them are simple and relatively inexpensive. Common thing is filtration can have a big impact. And then we also, as I mentioned, monitor for radon. And usually within every cohort, we have a couple people that have very high radon ratings and do mitigation fairly quickly. So a common observation is don't trust whatever you found out when you bought your house as a result of a 3-day test. That after they use our radon monitors, they want better data. So those are some of the ahas. So that just gives you, it's a very broad view of the cohort process. It is quite an investment of time. We do expect people to read the meters twice a day, keep a log, make observations, upload data to us once a week, and participate in the meetings. But it's an incredible free opportunity to learn a whole lot about your house and how you can improve, lower your particles, carbon monoxide, improve ventilation, all those things. Any questions so far? I tend to talk nonstop.
I'm watching the chat. I don't see any questions coming in. If you all would like to enter them in the chat, that would be one way we can answer questions. But when Linda asks, feel free to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask one at a time,
Thanks.
maybe by raising your hand.
Great. Yeah, I don't find that I can follow the chat, partly because I can't read it without doing this, which looks sort of stupid. But anyway, so now I'm gonna, go ahead.
I just wanted to know, how do you become part of a cohort?
You sign up. Well, I'll mention that. You got to stick through the end. You'll get the answer to that question.
Okay.
Okay. This is how we've learned, and this is sort of highlights of what we've learned as a result of working with over 400 sites and individuals. So 4 main buckets or strategies to reduce indoor particles. So they are: reduce the air exchange from the outside. This is assuming that the outdoor air is worse than the indoor air. Reduce indoor sources. Cook stoves, a key example. Reduce kicking stuff around that's already come in and settled on surfaces, walls, whatever. And then filter the air. So those are the four strategies. And we're going to go through each one of these. So this is a house with wide open windows. Basically, your indoor air is the same as your outdoor air. This graph is a graph you're going to see a couple of, and what it shows you is we have 3 dialos in each house, and in this case, the outdoor is on one bar, the indoor is another, and then the roamer is usually the bedroom monitor. And this is the percent of time that this monitor was in. In this case, it's the yellow is fair. So if you see a whole lot of yellow, that's not too good. Little bit of green is a little bit better. It's good. But anyway, in this case, and these graphs here are time series graphs. In other words, time and dates go across the bottom, left to right. And then the particle counts are vertical. And this is a log scale. So for some of you, that would make a lot of sense. It's just important. And you know how important it is to make sure people know that it's log scale, not linear, but it just means that it's not proportional, that each of these boxes doesn't represent the same quantity. It goes up logarithmically. Now here's a house, over 80-year-old house in the winter. And this is just showing you the effect of shutting windows. And it's a very, very nasty spell that's red. And red means bad. It's the worst. The deep red is the worst, the very bad. And then indoors, it's not great because it's still a lot of yellow, but it's a heck of a lot better than bad. So that just shows you that, gee, just having a house closed can make a huge difference. Windows closed. So I'm not, so I don't know if any of you are aware of Purple Air, Smell Pittsburgh, Air Now. Those are all online sources that are easy to access. Smell Pittsburgh's a great way you can weigh in and say, hey, I smell something stinky. And gee, it smells like sulfur or whatever, smells like rotten eggs. Purple Air is the name of a sensor. It's a private company, but they've got I don't know how many sensors worldwide, and you can look at the map. We have a lot of Purple Air monitors that we've deployed, but several other folks in the Pittsburgh region have too. So you can zoom in on Pittsburgh and you can see, hey, what's going on in Pittsburgh? And just by the color of the monitors, you can see, oh, doesn't look too good, or oh, it looks pretty decent. And you can also then go back and look at historical data. So just, there are good resources out there that you can use to get an online sense of what's going on outside. Okay. Reducing indoor sources. So cooking is a big one, and we've got some really good resources. We worked hard on this simply because it became so apparent that cooking was a major resource and we wanted people to have options. If you're going to close your windows, you need to take care of what's being generated indoors. So we developed a guidance document with a lot of recommendations on reducing emissions from cooking. And it's been updated a couple times. We also did a webinar a little over a year ago called Keep a Lid on It by the guy who developed our guidance document. So that's an easy way to just pick up, 90 minutes worth of great information on both range hoods and cooking emissions. But there's a lot of things you can do besides, I mean, obviously if you have a range hood, you should use it, but a vented range hood. But just how you cook, whether or not you fry or steam or bake, or if you use, it really helps to use lids because that allows you to have a lower temperature. Lower is better than higher. What kind of oil you use or butter, and what the smoke point is of that. And then even something as simple as adding salt and pepper to oil or butter before you start to cook reduces the emissions that come off. So there are many ways that you can reduce cooking emissions. You can even eat bacon and not create lots of things. And bacon's usually the one that causes 50,000 when a normal kitchen would be seeing, like 400. So bacon's a neat frame of reference. So there are a bunch of other indoor generated sources, and using humidifier with tap water when it's one of the better humidifiers is not recommended. If it says use distilled water, you should use distilled water, because basically you're volatilizing not only the minerals, but everything else in Pittsburgh's water. And you really don't want to be breathing Pittsburgh's water. I don't know that I want to be drinking it, let alone breathing it. But showers generate high humidity, but there also sometimes is other stuff that's coming out that appears to be related to the showering besides just the change in humidity. But cleaning products are a big one, and there's some cleaning products that are much cause less, but sometimes just the act of cleaning can stir up stuff. Personal hygiene makes a big difference. And then everything related to recreational combustion, which isn't just smoking, vaping, or whatever, but candles, incense, diffusers. The whole way that diffusers and incense works is it's creating incredibly tiny particles that are going straight into your bloodstream, into your brain. And that's why it's causing the positive effect that it causes, but you better hope it's not carrying anything else and those particles are clean particles. So those are indoor sources you want to keep a lid on. You want to really minimize and understood. Now, resuspension is basically don't stir it up. So a lot of what's in a house, and a lot of times people see spikes whenever there's activity. So if you've got dogs, if you've got people, if you've got kids, you're going to see a lot more spikes. And a lot of those are because you've got settled stuff on surfaces. So things like using a HEPA vacuum, or one thing that's really surprising is you always hear that, oh, wood floors or hard surface floors are healthier than carpeting. That's not necessarily true, but the thing is, you can walk on what looks like a clean floor and kick up particles. And I like to sort of say, well, what happens when we normally clean a hard surface floor, you get off the dust maybe by vacuuming the stuff you see, but then you might smear a mop or a Swifter around and you're basically just creating a smudged, smeared surface. And when you walk over it, that stuff gets kicked into the air. It's a big problem, like in schools. I mean, usually they're not cleaned properly, and it's a huge source of particles. But anyway, walk-off mats mean that you don't track everything in. Getting rid of old carpets, particularly if somebody else deposited all their stuff in the old carpets, but just old upholstered furniture or bedding, all those things can be a factor. So, but the other thing to think about is in Pittsburgh, if you've got an older house and you've been in your attic, you might not only have the stuff that's come in the last year or so, you might have legacy pollution from 100 years ago in an attic. I know in some Pittsburgh attics, because I've done work related to energy efficiency, and there are attics where there's like a, at least a full 1/4 inch of soot. Interesting archaeological dig, but anyway, if you stir that stuff up, or if you do major remodeling and you've got stuff in the walls, you could really do a lot. In fact, another construction or remodeling can be a major source of resuspension. So really important to consider that. So Kathy, how are we for time? My clock quit when the power went out.
We have 20 minutes left. I'd like to allow at least 10 minutes for questions. So you have a good 10 minutes left, I would say.
Yeah, I'll keep in that. So the last thing is filtering the air. So ideally, you don't let the bad air in. You reduce the indoor sources. You don't stir up stuff, where you clean it thoroughly so that there's nothing to stir up. And then you clean up the air to basically mop up, to take care of everything else. And the more of this stuff you have, the more filtration you need. So the options to filtering the air are portable air cleaners, do-it-yourself fan filters, and a central air handler with a good filter in them. So this is where we've done a lot of work, a lot of our efforts. And this graph, same graph as you saw before, but we went back and, as soon as we had enough houses, probably when we had, 50 sites, we generated this graph, and we were looking at, let me get rid of that. We're looking at, well, what's going on with these guys that are in the excellent, very good, and good range? What are they doing differently? And we noticed, in addition to the fact they tended to be a little bit newer houses without as many kids and pets, that wasn't statistically significant, but there definitely was a trend, which is sort of interesting. These were also houses that had usually 24/7 filtration with either portable or air cleaner, central air handler, or a combination of both. So it's like, well, and there are also people out here that have 24/7 or use filtration and don't make it here, but that's because there's a lot of sources, a lot of generation, and those houses are very leaky, bigger houses. So this is a graph of data from my house. This is 1 week period. Again, this is a time series graph. Where's my cursor? My cursor disappeared. Here we go. So the top jaggedy bar that's brown is outdoor. The bottom blue line is indoor, and the orange line is what I call the part of my house I don't live in. So I basically, partly for energy purposes and partly because I'm one person living in a house, I don't need my whole house. I live in what I call the treated zone, which is the back 2 rooms of the house. That's where my kitchen, bedroom, office are. So anyway, I run and have a portable air cleaner that I run 24/7. And this basically shows the outdoor, the untreated, and then the treated. And sorry, my animation's getting ahead of me now. But when the outdoor is the worst, even though this is a tight house, it's an older house, but it's thoroughly insulated and air sealed. It has been net zero at several periods, so it's low energy. When the outdoor is bad, the indoor is the highest, even with the treatment, even with the air cleaner running 24/7. And most importantly, is in the period when the outdoor air was the best, the indoor dropped so low that you could have easily not run that air cleaner 24/7. But there's so seldom, the periods are so erratic that I just run it 24/7. But if we had consistently good outdoor air quality, I could put it on a timer and wouldn't need to run it 24/7 to stay into the excellent zone. So that's an example of a store-bought portable air cleaner with Dylos data. So we asked folks in a survey, do you still use your air cleaner or fan filter? This was mostly after they finished monitoring. 90% said yes. And then when we asked why, this was the response. 72% said they saw the effectiveness, and 28% said they had actually saw a health impact. And this is one of the biggest problems with air cleaners is people don't use them or they get turned off. They only work if they're being used. Now there's another option of having, well, one thing I'll say about air cleaners first before I move on. A lot of different air cleaners on the market. I just listened to a National Academy of Science summary report today. It's a great presentation, a great report. I'll send it to Kathy so she can post it. But the bottom line is that the consensus of the larger committee of scientists that worked on it said that in terms of portable air cleaners, it should be, if you're buying an air cleaner, it should be HEPA, and stay away from all the other stuff, plasma, UV, ultraviolet, that's not proven and can actually create toxins. So just that's all I need to say. Fan filters is just a box fan with a filter attached. And this was from one of our early meetings. You might recognize some of these folks. Marin's gets around. She was remodeling, that's why hers is so dirty. But anyway, much lower cost. The key thing is any fan that you buy nowadays is going to be UL rated with an overheat protection. So you can easily attach a filter to it. We like the 4-inch deep because it's going to work much longer and not get clogged. But the thing is, this can be used just as a freestanding filter in a house. And it actually will drop the particles as well as the store-bought portable air cleaner. Now, some store-bought air cleaners are going to drop other things too. This is just going to go after the particles. But we've seen as good reductions with a fan filter as we have with the $300 or $400 or $500 air cleaners. Now, the other way you could use this is you could stick it in a window so that if you're one of these folks that really likes to cool your house in the winter time, in the summertime, bring in the nice cool air, you could filter that air so you're not dumping a bunch of pollution into your house and into your bedroom. So this is a case where a person had pretty poor air quality. It was an attached house on the south side. Anyway, so these are the 3 different locations: outdoor, indoor, and his bedroom. And right here is when he added a fan filter, and all of a sudden you see a lot of green. The red basically means very poor. So that's consistent across my graphs, is that deep green is good. So huge impact. You might have heard of Corsi-Rosenthal cubes, and it was Corsi that I was listening to today at the National Academy of Sciences webinar. But anyway, they're really making the rounds, and that's using a less expensive filter, still a high MER filter, but 1 or 2 inch thick, and then putting the box fan on top. A lot more tape involved, but the idea is there's not as much resistance. We do not recommend that you attach a 1 or 2 inch filter to a box fan because of resistance. But if you do it this way with a cube, you're compensating for that resistance. Okay, so on to air handlers. Basically an air handler is the stuff related to moving air, heated or cooled or filtered air in a house that has a forced air system. So if you've got a furnace, if you've got an air conditioner, you probably have ductwork, and therefore you've got an air handling system. Now, we developed a checklist, and this checklist is our guidance on what should be done if you've got an air handler to check it. So you could ask a HVAC contractor, can you do these things before you have them come out to your house and find out, oh, I don't know how to do that. But anyway, so air handlers basically are typically operated on auto. This is controlled on the thermostat, and by pushing this button, it comes to auto, and it's not on, it's auto. And auto means that it only comes on with this call for heat and cool. And the average runtime of your air handler is 15%. So from a filtration standpoint, that's not good enough. You could have the best filter in the world, but the air's only going through it 15% of the time. It's inadequate for filtration, and it doesn't align with your need for filtration. With smart thermostats, you get more control. You can actually dial in and say, hey, I want to run the air handler 50% of the time. However, there's a catch, and that is there are big issues running an air handler 24/7. We do know if you run it 24/7 with a high MERV filter, it filters well. However, air handler energy use can be high. It's typical for the motors to draw 50 to 1500 watts. That's a lot. That could cost $500 to $1,500 a year. I should have modified this to indicate CO2. I mean, you guys that are interested in climate know that, man, you're talking about a lot of energy. And part of that's because the blowers are seldom set properly. They're not set in the field. They're just set on default. So they're running at too high of a speed. And then ductwork is not done as well as it should be. And as a result, you can have problems that lead to equipment failure and duct leaks, and you can end up with much higher heating or cooling costs. So there's a lot of liability to running an air handler 24/7. However, if you've checked out everything, we came up with a retrofit that can work some of the time if you control for problems. So this is this is what we do. We change out the return drop. This is often restricted, and this filter is a 1-inch filter that's not big enough. So we put in a big deep filter, and we replace the blower with a more efficient blower. So this system costs about $1,000 material and labor. We often split that cost with participants if they're willing to monitor. And the energy cost of that's $12.50 a month, and it circulates filtered air all through the house. This is our best performing house so far, but look at this deep green. And this was when air quality outside was really bad. And she often has numbers that are down below 10 or in the 10 to 20 range. So really, I mean, you don't have a frame of reference for how good that is, but believe me, that's amazing. I mean, 75 and below is excellent, and she's seeing 10 and 12 and 20. But this is when outdoor was bad. So this was in a very, very poor area. So again, $12 a month. She also ran a portable air cleaner in that house to knock things even further. So the essentials for filtration are: you want deep, 4 or 5 inches, you want it larger, you want low resistance, and that information should start coming on filters. There's a lot of pressure to address resistance. You want to make sure air can't go around the filter, because if it can, it will, and the filter's not doing a darn thing. And we recommend MERV 13 because it's going to drop the 0.3 to 0.5 particles, the smallest stuff. And it's got to be on enough to work, but only if it passes the diagnostic screening. So that is, don't operate without confirming the fan cost, the duct leakage to the outside, the static pressure, which means that if it's static pressure is too high, it means basically your ducts aren't big enough for your system. Best thing you could do is downsize when you replace your system. And then, really watch out for 1-inch pleated filters. We find that they can get really clogged in just 2 to 3 weeks. So, you want to change. If you got a 1-inch filter, you want to change it frequently. So that's all I have on interventions. The piece I want to do now is just a few conclusions. One is that what we found is low-cost monitors really reinforce behavior and investment. We do feel that our support and our context makes the difference, because if somebody just had some monitors in place, they might lack the ability to interpret and get the feedback they get from us. But we don't think people need low-cost monitors all the time. I mean, getting them just for a month can be very valuable. Though we do have people that keep coming around for other cohorts because they enjoy monitoring, and we're just fun to work with. Obviously I'm not biased. But if there's lower outdoor particles, the indoor levels are lower as well. Not only are they lower, they also dilute what's indoors faster. There is no magic bullet, though. It's really clear that there's not just a technical fix that's going to work. It's the combination of occupants and building systems and buildings. But the good thing is that it is possible to have a huge impact on your particle levels and your exposure in your home. But the broader issue is that the better air quality and housing stock improvements are needed, and there are incredible disparities among folks, particularly low-income folks, who are exposed to greater sources due to where they live, greater pollution sources outdoors. And it's not uncommon for them to have lower quality housing and fewer resources to address and make improvements. They might be much less likely to be able to afford air conditioning, even for limited periods of time. So where does this lead us? The implications for climate change, I think, are that we really need on-site solutions, and the on-site solutions need to be holistic in enhancing health, resilience, energy efficiency, not just kilowatt hours, but also kilowatt, the load impacts, comfort and durability. So we're not doing the full scale home improvements, including vented range hoods, building tightness, energy efficiency, but there's a whole bunch of stuff that could be put together into a package along with the stuff we're recommending. It's much easier to make the case for that kind of investment if you have multiple benefits. You've got greater value both to sell that to individuals as well as possibly funding sources. And these multiple benefits are not these things alone, sorry, but they're also job and local economic impact. If we had HVAC companies and support to do that intervention we do with air handlers, you could employ a lot of people in Pittsburgh, believe me. But then if you will see a reduction of fossil fuel use impacting both outdoor and indoor air. So as we move and address climate change, in theory, we'd really see some benefits. But then as you have better air quality, you can operate these interventions less, because obviously there is an energy impact to running filtration in particular. And then the last thing is that if we have on-site solutions, we've got the capacity to respond, to address both those folks that are more vulnerable as well as everybody who's not vulnerable to worsening climate incidences, whether they be heat events, thermal inversions, wildfire smoke. We even saw the effect of the California wildfires in the east. So I think there are also more, maybe we'll have time for you guys to throw out some additional things. But we did want to acknowledge that we have funding from Heinz endowments, and this is the answer to the question. What you need to do to participate in a cohort is you need to sign up for the intro session, 2 different times. And then the monitoring is February 24th to March 25th. And you can get to the sign up by going to our website, rocis.org. And on the front, it'll link you to a page that has the registration link for the GoToWebinar meeting that's on the 14th and 15th. So the idea is you learn what's involved in more detail at this intro session. After you participate in the intro session, you then get to say, yep, I'm in, this sounds great. I do have time to commit now, and count me in. Or you can say, oh, maybe another month, another time. This isn't good timing for me, or I don't want to know that much, whatever the case may be. But anyway, So hope you still got some time for questions. Where are we on
Thanks,
time?
Linda. I just put the link to much of what you were talking about on the website into the chat, including the link to register for the February info session and the dates and times and yours and Emily's email addresses.
Great. And I'm sorry I didn't leave you 10 full minutes. I really thought it's just a little
I'm
tighter.
not sure if we are going to have a lot of questions. The only one I saw was from Catherine. She asked about solutions, but I think you covered that very thoroughly as you went through your presentation. Catherine, did you have additional questions for Linda about solutions?
Hi, no, it was more about, yeah, how are you letting people know who aren't part of this program, what they can do? Yeah, that was the question.
Okay. Well, we're about to roll out a modified website. We also have done, in cooperation, I don't know how many of you know Mark Dixon. He's done 5 videos that sort of tell the story of some of our projects and talk about the interventions, but also talk about the impact of particularly particles and health impacts. They're short videos. They're like 6 minutes. So they're you know, it's not a lot to take them in. And we've got quite a network of our past participants and the organizations they represent that, you know, have previously indicated a willingness to share that information. So that's our primary outreach, just to get information out. But what's tricky, I think you can, I probably conveyed some confusion in my presentation by not making things just absolutely clear cut and simple. But the reality is that it's confusing. The reality is that it is complicated. You can intend to do something that's making it better and it can end up worse. So it's something we really struggle with, is that balance of getting people excited and empowered. And certainly something like the fan filter. I mean, the fan filter and the portable air cleaner are sort of nice things because they're not going to cause equipment failure. They're not going to cost a fortune. You have to replace the filter. And we are actually part of we've got funding from both ACAN, and we're also working with VCAN, Valley Clean Air Now in the Mon Valley, and ACAN, Allegheny County Clean Air Now. They're really pursuing funding to do hundreds of houses in the Valley with providing free portable air cleaners. And we also did one project with 48 homes with portable air cleaners 2 summers ago.
Linda, if you'd be able to share Mark Dixon's short videos through links, YouTube links, I'd be happy to send them out when we send out our recording for this.
Okay, we're really trying to drive people through our website, which isn't launched yet, but at the same time, I think we'd I mean,
or we can be patient, we can wait.
No, it makes sense to make an exception, just because if you guys look at it, then that gives you good information. I mean, sometimes in this presentation I do a video, but I've had problems with the technology and I didn't want to do that. So
yeah,
you'll see a video if you, so you could come to this intro session, even if you're thinking, I don't think I'm into that, but I'm curious. So, and you'll see one of the videos there.
Oh, great. That'd be great. Bob, did you have a question?
Yeah, I guess we're kind of short on time. I think Heinz Hall is using a bipolar ionization equipment of some type to improve their air quality, and our church is considering that. I was wondering if you have any particular guidance on that.
I'm not familiar with that technology. There's good resources on EPA's website, and particularly EPA's website under EPA. I think it's IAQ.
I'll check
where
that
the
out.
That's where the National Academy of Sciences report is, that just came out today at 1 o'clock. So it's hot off the press as you can get. And they address schools and mostly homes, but obviously what relates to schools could relate. But that's where Richard Corsi just said, basically, watch out for the other stuff. So there's definitely concern for some of those other technologies.
And maybe you can talk to our Citizens Climate Lobby group and out in our area sometime too. That would be really cool.
I would love to.
Okay, I mean, this is just fascinating information, and I just quickly, I mean, you put a whole new meaning to the word fresh air. I wonder surely in Waynesburg, the air's better than in Pittsburgh, you know? No?
No, what's amazing, and this is based on, well, actually, we've got fracking all over the place and a lot of diesel, so we've got our own emerging local air pollutants. But bottom line is that that's what really amazed me is we've got these digraphs, time series graphs showing, and usually Waynesburg has been represented for most of 5 years. And we're sort of usually in the middle of the pack. So but it, you know, it doesn't capture the stuff smaller, and that's important to recognize. It's only down to a half a micron, but that's half a micron's pretty tiny. So anyway, that was a real eye opener, and that's where the whole idea of it's the airshed, and airshed is all of southwestern Pennsylvania. We definitely see better air quality over. We've got a team member that's over Blairsville up in the mountains, and she's got better air over there.
If we bought the Dylos thing, how much would it be?
The one we use, the 1700, I think if you buy an individual one, it might be, I don't know if it's $3.25, $3.50. It might be a little
Thank you.
more than that, one at a time. We usually buy 20, so I think it's $2.99. The purple air monitors might be a better technology. I'd be glad to talk to you if you want to contact me about purchasing something. Big problem in that they have to be calibrated and they need to be checked, and yeah, that's a liability. Most people
I'll
don't
reach out
realize
to
you buy a
you.
low-cost monitor, it's not going to last probably longer than a year or two.
Okay.
We will be circulating our recording of this presentation throughout the membership. So you might be getting quite a few calls because I want to encourage you all to at least sign up for the intro webinar for Linda's February cohort, because sometimes all of the data can be a little bit scary. And I know you can all do it. If I can do it, if I'm computer savvy enough to do it, I know you can do it, especially way back 6 or 7 years ago when I actually did it. And you will be surprised at what you learn about your home and about your ambient air quality. And someone living in the same community can have markedly different effects. So it's really interesting. It's definitely worth being part of, and you're making an enormous contribution to the data set. So you're helping all the people, all the building science nerds like Linda out there who have data coming out of their ears. You're really helping them to put together an accurate picture of what's happening in southwestern Pennsylvania. I don't know, Wanda, do you want to wrap up?
Yeah. Here I am. Well,
I do want to say thank you very much for the opportunity to be here.
Oh, and thank you for joining us. This was an incredible presentation, just chock full of really valuable information.
Yes, this was really wonderful. And thanks everybody for being here. And I would like to end this with saying, Spirit that hears each one of us, hear all that is. Just listen, help us listen, and inspire us now. Let it be so. Thank you.
Thank you all. Great to see everybody. Have a wonderful evening.
Yes.